All right. I want to get you for one more, and then we're gonna get out of here. Can I get
Okay.
one more news story? All
Okay.
right, because I really want to hear your take on this.
Okay. Uh-oh.
So your boy Yeezy, Kanye West,
Christ.
was at a fashion show in Paris wearing a
Oh.
shirt featuring the political catchphrase "White Lives Matter." I'm gonna show you this 2-minute clip, and then it's a news story it's a from you that I got from YouTube that summarizes it. Then I want to get your commentary on it. Here we go.
Another day, another Kanye West controversy. This time over shirts sporting the phrase, quote, "White Lives Matter."
Well, Paris is the church of fashion.
On Monday, the rapper surprised fans at Yeezy's Paris Week fashion show by posing it up in the design with polarizing conservative commentator Candis Owens.
I believe our government is interested in liberating Ukrainians like I believe that the Black Lives Matter riots were about liberating Black Americans, which is to say, not at all.
The political pundit posted these photos on Twitter, no captions on the pics. It's worth noting the Anti-Defamation League condemns the saying as a, quote, white supremacist phrase, born out of a, quote, racist response to the Black Lives Matter movement. ET's reached out to Kanye's reps about the controversial fashion statement. So far, he's provided no explanation, even though he gave interviews about his new collection backstage.
And it looked like there's just everything pulled on over the head.
Yeah, that was the idea. There was no zippers. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
The shocking shirts struck a nerve online, especially since it's quite the pivot from who the rapper used to be.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Among the backlash, journalist Jamil Hill, who says, quote, "So many folks are trying to excuse Kanye wearing a White Lives Matter t-shirt as just a troll move or marketing, but it's a dangerously dumb message to send for someone with his massive platform." Jaden Smith, who says he left the show as soon as the shirts popped up on the runway, sends a simple message, simply tweeting, quote, "Black Lives Matter."
Anyone with a position of power in entertainment should be held accountable for racism.
Activist Mark Lamont Hill calls Kanye's decision, quote, "disgusting, dangerous, and irresponsible. Some of y'all will rush to defend him. You should ask yourselves why." While Van Lathan, host of the Higher Learning podcast, argues, quote, "the notion that it always has to be about white people in America is incredibly frustrating, emotionally draining, and the whole problem." But here's Kanye apparently centering that notion.
All right. I really want to get your take on Kanye West's antics lately. He also went on to go on Fox News and do an interview about that. But
I saw snippets. Wow.
Yeah, and I think I sent it to you ahead of time. So what do you think about kind of Kanye? There's a little bit of history. He was kind of, he was wearing the MAGA hat. He visited with Trump. That was a little bit of controversy. That actually might have contributed to him actually divorcing his ex-wife. And then he kind of laid low for a while after that, and now he's kind of back at it again, fraternizing with the enemy, so to speak, at least from the point of view of people. And he's wearing White Lives Matter shirts, and there's, you heard from all of the notable people who are up in arms about that. Another one is Boosie. He went on.
I saw that
tirade. So, what are your thoughts about what Kanye is doing?
Kanye is loaded. I think that, well, let's separate intention from impact, right? Like, I believe the intention was to troll. I think that, notwithstanding Kanye West I think he has some mental health stuff going on. I think there's other stuff going on. I don't think that he's crazy in the sense that everything he's saying is just out of, just being in emotional distress due to other things that have happened in his past. I'm not even going to get into that too much. But the main thing I would say for him is, I think it was intended to troll, right? I think it was intended to troll, but I think the impact and the way it was received was different than the intention behind what he was trying to do. I do agree that it was irresponsible for slightly different reasons, but I think the main reason is that you're not going to get the reaction like this is one thing. you're doing it to get a particular reaction. That's why I think it's a troll. You know you're going to get a particular reaction. You can't sit there and tell me that you didn't know you're going to get this reaction when you put this White Lives Matter shirt on. Now, you may not have translated, putting White Lives Matter on the shirt, even though what is the harm? What does it mean? What's wrong with saying that? There's nothing wrong in saying that. But we all know why. It's not necessarily wrong in saying it, but considering the context of why we originally said Black Lives Matter versus White Lives Matter, and the responses and the All Lives Matter and all these things that happen, you know that people are going to be quote unquote triggered by this, right? Mm-hmm. Which I have a problem with. That's kind of what I also have a problem with. Like, why are you trying to? What is the point in doing that? You know that's going to happen. Now, if your overall point was people like Patrice Cullors and others were out of pocket, and then this whole movement that was supposed to uplift Black people was flawed in many ways and blah, blah, blah. If that's your commentary, there are better ways to make that commentary, in my opinion. There are better ways to make that commentary about how Black Lives Matter was problematic in its own way. But we don't need to put a White Lives Matter shirt on. Number one, it's one of those things that, first of all, it's dangerous because it reinforces beliefs that we're already trying to fight against. Not so much that White Lives Matter, but sort of this response from a Black man and a Black woman, by the way, which is why I was kind of confused when he was with Candis, because I feel like Candis's sort of thing is a different thing. Like, I think that she's a grifter, and I think that some things she says she believes, but I think in general she's mostly a con artist, in my opinion. That's me. So when I saw her wear this, I was like, oh, this is obviously a troll. She's just trolling hella hard, trying to get people, fucking triggered. That's like the main thing. That was like the main thing I had with this. I don't even think she even cares about. I think she cares. She did care about Black Lives Matter and saying that it was problematic, but I don't think she cares about to the point where she's going to wear a White Lives Matter shirt. I think it was to troll. It was to troll heavy and sort of get a reaction, which is trolling, from people who really believe in Black Lives Matter. But then what they're doing is you're taking away the validity from the actual grievance of Black Lives Matter when you're wearing a White Lives Matter shirt, and in a way to troll, in a function of trolling folks that were all about that. And I get it. You're trying to make an overarching point that, well, this group was flawed in this way, and then they exploited people, and they didn't really do anything for Black people substantively. It was just more of like a slogan and people crying out. We can have that discussion without putting a White Lives Matter shirt on. And I can concede that there's nothing wrong with putting the shirt on, but is the messaging in lieu of what's going on is dangerous, because what you're doing is you in a way, I think you're minimizing and diminishing the meaning and the impact of what that was supposed to be in the first place by putting this there and sort of like not necessarily overriding, but saying that, okay, well, yeah, that happened. Like Black Lives Matter, did that and blah, 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 blah. But they were just an organization that was flawed, and that had a lot of corruption, and that didn't really do anything for Black people. And you're just hyperfixating on that alone without talking about the fact that this meant a lot more to a lot of people. And that meaning that was there had some weight. And those things still need to be addressed when we talk about police brutality and all these other things. So I think it's unfair. It's unfair for them to take that and just minimize it and put it in a box. So in that sense, I'm half irritated and offended, and I'm half like, okay, I hear you, but and what? I hear you, but and what? What does this mean? And then what's this? That's kind of where I'm at with all of this. So
there's a lot of similarities between your view and my view. I did a segment. I haven't released it yet because I've been editing it. It's the shortest segment I did. I'm going to release it concurrent with this one because they're kind of topical. I was thinking about blending them just to see if there's any difference between me by myself versus me with you. But I think that there was a troll factor there. I think that whatever valid critiques that one could give of Black Lives Matter, and I think that there are plenty, that was probably the worst way to do it, because it's not clear what the critique even is by saying White Lives Matter.
Exactly.
It seems like the simple idea, if I'm going to take it seriously, is that if you are the kind of person that's totally cool with Black Lives Matter, then why are you totally all upset with White Lives Matter? Don't they matter too? Like, and so, if you're mad, then that proves that you don't think White Lives Matter and you're the real racist. Like, okay, like if that's your critique of Black Lives Matter, then it's like, okay, that's not even the best critique one can give. I think Candis Owens goes a little overboard with Black Lives Matter in terms of making it seem like they're a terrorist organization or something like that. I think that there's definitely room to criticize the corruption in terms of the mishandling of the $90 million plus that they got to the foundation. And there's that lawsuit by the 26 local chapters of the foundation. That doesn't look good. It makes the movement look bad. It makes Black people look bad by extension.
True.
And those are fair criticisms. I think the biggest thing that harms Black Lives Matter are those things more so than White Lives Matter shirts. I don't think that's not as big of a threat to the movement as those other things, because they're substantive and they lend credence to the kinds of criticisms that people who just didn't like Black Lives Matter from the start already had. It gives them something tangible to go with and be like, see, we told you. Yeah. And your point, and I don't think I touched on this in my individual segment, there are a lot of people who genuinely and in good faith had a vested interest in the actual goals of the movement and in terms of any kind of freedom struggle for Black people. In fact, that's the sense in which it appealed to even me. But they were put off by the kind of Marxist Black feminist ideological bent. They didn't agree with that, so that rubbed some Black people the wrong way. But those who were more progressive and were cool with that part of it, it's really the mishandling of funds and the lack of, like, I think, tangible benefits for the Black community in the wake of making $90 million. Like that I think is the biggest blow amongst the progressives. Like, they don't fuck with that shit. Yeah. So I agree that, and as far as Kanye West goes, I'm not one of the people who is like, oh, like, deplatform him and cancel him. Like, I'm never been a fan of that cancel culture stuff. Like, I'm that just, like, to me, that's stupid. And, like, it's so politically biased too, because when he was willing to rabble rouse against the Republicans, everybody left of center loved him. But now he's doing it against the Democrats, and now motherfuckers are all, like, super up in arms, particularly white liberals. They're losing their shit. So Kanye is a bad person. Kanye West has mental health issues. I'm like, and I there's a kind of, like, it's interesting to like consider the racial undertones of Kanye West must be crazy because he doesn't think like a Black person should. Like, and that's the kind of thing that Candis Owens and the Larry Elders are, like, point out that I actually think is valid. Like, there is something about that's a little off when woke white liberals are like accusing Black people who don't think in ways that they think that they ought to as, like, being mentally ill or crazy or whatever, Uncle Toms and shit. Like, white people are really comfortable with these labels, like a little too comfortable. And I don't know, man. Like, there is some valid criticism there of woke white liberals for sure. And it's the people who are, like, really the ones spouting all that racism shit that seem to not notice, and that's weird to me. I'm like, y'all the main ones talking about systemic racism and various forms of oppression when the Republicans do shit, but when the Democrats do shit, y'all are awkwardly quiet. And I don't understand that shit. So I have that critique. But as far as what he did, my only criticism of it is trolling for trolling's sake is not going to get us anywhere. It doesn't serve our discourse. There's valid critiques of Black Lives Matter to be had. You should articulate them more clearly. And that's really the only problem I have with the shirt. Exactly. I don't think it's like, yeah.
I feel the same way to a degree. And when I talk about Kanye's mental health, I'm not necessarily just talking about his shift in political views or the way he's engaging with the world and trying to figure things out. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about there's certain moments where I feel like there's this sort of like erratic kind of behavior, like a momentary lapse in judgment. And I think that that's happened, but I also think that he hasn't really been, he's had some of these beliefs and he's been sort of this person before, but I think, and I'm not trying to pathologize him too much, but I think after his, like, mom passed, I don't think he's really been the same. I don't think he's been the same. And it doesn't mean just because he wore a MAGA hat and all that. I thought that phase was him trying to figure himself out. I thought that phase was him trying to figure out his world and understand certain things that weren't taught to him. And he talked about this sort of in the Tucker Carlson interview. So like, I think that's what he was doing then. I just think that the confusion and the frustration, it's a function of being Black and being relatively successful and kind of being isolated and having your own point of view. So you're gonna come off a little bit off. But I also think that there's some mental health stuff going on in general. Him trying to figure out his like moral compass and what he's trying to be and who. Like, I think that there's some discovery going on in there, and there's some confusion and there's some frustration. There's a lot of that because there are things that he's done in the past where he's walked back like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that, right? So, like, you know, for me, and that's a human thing, right? We do things, you know. If we, I mean, not everybody walks it back, but we do things that we probably should have walked back, right? You know, later on. So I'm not as liberal with the mental health thing. That's why I don't want to pathologize him, but I do think that something is not right. It doesn't just because he said that that whole tirade he had on the TMZ thing and all this stuff about all the stuff he was saying. Like, I that stuff is not. Those are the things signaling mental health issues for me. I just think that the overall behavior that's going on, there's a cry for help that's going on that I don't think that we're really acknowledging. But also, yes, like I said, he's trying to find himself. He's trying to figure things out for himself as a Black man in America with a relatively very high success.
It seems like a lot of people left of center are more concerned about the fact that he's influential and that he could drive people away from the left, Black people in particular, with his influence, as opposed to genuinely caring about his mental health or any kind of cry for help.